Hey there, welcome to episode 14 of the Quad Glowing Sand audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. Today is the 14th of February. Some people might call it Valentine's Day. I just call it Wednesday, 2024. It is just afternoon here in Las Vegas. Sunny Las Vegas, I think. That's nice. The Super Bowl is over. Life can continue just back to normal. I've been meaning to do a lateral thinking episode. I mentioned that last week, so I will continue to mention it. In the meantime, today we're going to speak of one of the things that probably identified me for my re-entry into Silicon Valley from about 2012 to when I moved in 2008. No, 2008, around 2008 to 2012, 13 food trucks. Anyway, there are people who visit food trucks now and then. Sometimes they use the R word to refer to them. Sometimes they go find the taco truck, the lunchero that is parked at the usual place. They don't move. Maybe people in Oregon who go to food pods. They don't really move at all, so they're not really mobile. There are people who are big fans and they go to all the events and they take foodie pics on Instagram, and they're the regulars, if you will. And then there are people who go overboard, and that's probably me. Today's links, I don't really have any. So I just have my usual two shameless self-promotion links: buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo and ko-fi.com/DanHugo, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. Why no links? Well, I will say flat out, there are no tools in the world that I have come across, although I will mention two that I think do pretty good. There are no tools that that offer the functionality that mobile vendors need, and that customers need, and that organizers need, event organizers and so on. So I don't want to really promote anything. And there are the random articles about food trucks opening here and there. Bert Gall, someone I had direct interactions with in the Bay Area with the Institute for Justice in Arlington, Virginia, had much to say about the trials and tribulations of mobile food vendors, or street food vendors, if you will, although those are kind of different. He had a nice ebook, I guess you could say, called Streets of Dreams, which is a good read, but you're not going to read it anyway. So, but if you are interested in food trucks, then great. We'll probably talk about this more because, well, maybe I'll get to it at the end. Anyway, so buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo if you would like to find out more about all of my various projects. I updated this about 2 weeks ago, I think, with my favorite coffees. You are under no obligation to give me any money, but if you do, it will go towards purchasing either coffee beans or coffee equipment. And I did a whole show about making coffee, a whole episode. ko-fi.com/DanHugo. As I've said every week, I'm still trying to figure out how I want to use that, but it's on there. So ko-fi.com/DanHugo and buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, DANHUGO. On with the show. So why did I get into food trucks? How did it start? I will preface my own notes by saying that being from the East Coast, from the New Jersey area, well, from New Jersey, actually, I had been exposed to street food vendors, especially pretzels and hot dogs, and not so much hot dogs. That's a story for another time, but for a specific reason. But definitely Italian ice, definitely pretzels, definitely stuff like that. Just carnival food, really. But I was familiar as a child. We would go to Central Park. There'd be street food vendors there. So it was not a new idea. The notion of calling a food truck a roach coach was part of sort of American culture, a little ha-ha. That's always unfortunate. So now the R word is not used, mostly because it perpetuates the myth that food trucks are in some way not regulated or not inspected by the health department or not owned by people who actually care. Now, I've seen them. I've unfortunately experienced directly the fact that there are owners And there are food trucks that do not meet that standard, but they are in the vast minority. So you may denigrate one particular vendor if you find one that is beyond the pale, but for the most part, I mean, for the drastically most part, people who own food trucks are just as concerned about cleanliness and freshness and so on, and the health department, sometimes multiple health departments that they are responsible to for inspections and permits, so on. The whole system is not rigged to allow the roach coach to continue. So, in fact, active engagement by the health department with the customers and the actual owners can keep because food trucks are on the move all the time. So inspections are sometimes tricky. A more proactive engagement loop would help to keep any troublesome mobile vendors from ruining it for everybody. So how it started? Well, I was working at Palm. Was I working at Palm? No, I was working at Jawbone. Sorry, I've told this part of the story before. Jawbone. I would later work at Palm. Working at Jawbone, the credit union I was using for my banking services was very near. I was there one time. One of the tellers said, "Hey, do you like food trucks? My friends have a food truck called Big, with 2 G's, Big Shrimpin'." So she said they're going to be at this event called Edgewood Eats in Palo Alto. That's at an old, probably like a grocery store in the parking lot. So I was like, interesting. I would not have known. And that's how food truck news was spread in the Bay Area in something like 2008, was word of mouth and Twitter and Facebook a little bit and Yelp, random casting the wide net. So Edgewood Eats, I went over there and I was immediately smitten. I was hooked. Like, wow, this is fun. So I would go there every week. It's like one day a week. So about 8 to 12, probably 8 or 10, probably. Food trucks of various types. I would start to see the same ones. Mobile, Mobowl. Whisk on Wheels, Mayo and Mustard eventually, which was one of my favorites. All these 3 that I just mentioned are some of my favorites. There were many favorites, but that's the beauty. They come to you. So I was at the time developing a thing called RegularDB, which I had set aside when I started working with Jawbone. RegularDB was about connecting bartenders and service industry folks with their customers, because your service industry favorites, maybe they had a shift change, maybe they started working somewhere else, maybe they took some time off, and so often the regular relationship is centered on the place of business, a bar, a coffee shop, etc. So there may be a detailed conversation about upcoming plans or vacations or whatever, but maybe not. And so that project was inspired by one of my friends who was working during a paternity leave shift, so a different shift than normal, at my usual on Murphy Avenue in downtown Sunnyvale. And she said one time, "I need to get more regulars." And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, how do you engage customers without sharing your personal life on Facebook or similar? So RegularDB was born. It was an interesting ride. Definitely learned a lot about local, hyperlocal at the time. Local, I think they just called it hyperlocal. Local marketing, like how do you engage people that want to go see their favorite bartender, barista, hamburger chef, whomever, at a particular location at a particular time, so you know that they're going to be in that locality, so you could market to them like, oh, and by the way, since you're going to Dan's Usual over there, there's a sale on this or that next door, down the street, so that they were aware of those things. So hyperlocal marketing, the model seemed to work, but it was also not a great time just because of the economy and so on, such as life. So that same notion, though, I started saying, well, instead of working with the employees, nothing wrong with the employees, but instead of working with the employees and then trying to convince the business owners to use the tool for a marketing device, why do I not just talk? Because it's a similar problem, right? Your favorite bartender, barista, may or may not be where you thought they would be at a particular time and date. Like, oh, so-and-so's not. I learned from some surveying that small bars especially, 75% of their incoming phone calls were, who's working? So similarly, how do you know which food trucks will be at Edgewood Eats or at wherever, right? Oh, just check the Facebook page. So the barrier to entry to having a food truck event was very low, but the barrier of entry to promoting and getting people aware of it was based almost entirely on organic sharing and cross promotion by the people attending. So that was an interesting observation, seminal even. If you follow a food truck on some sort of social media platform, and this is back in 2008, 2010, if you follow one, and this is in the Bay Area, you would start to see them tweeting or mentioning other food trucks, especially if they were going to be at an event with them. Like, hey, come to Edgewood Eats and join us and 8 other Twitter handles, tweets in the tweet. So like, oh, okay, now I know who's going to be at this event, or Facebook, similar. So cross promotion, the value of co-opetition was tangible, fairly obvious. And the culture of co-opetition in the Bay Area was strong. And so there was very active cross promotion. In fact, sometimes, given the nature of the Bay Area, the geography with that big giant bay in the middle, if you're on the East Bay and your favorite food truck is on the west side on the peninsula, you might be following them on Twitter and they're like, hey, come and see us at a new spot on the peninsula, blah, blah, blah. But if you can't make it over here, check out our other friends at this other event on the East Bay, right? So they would often like actively send customers to other places. Not kidding. Kind of the Miracle on 34th Street, Macy, Bloomingdale's thing. So at the end of the day, the customers enjoyed this, like adding a new favorite to their list. And the joy of mobile vending, as I said, was if you have 2 favorites and one is here today and one is here tomorrow, you don't have to decide, oh, I don't want to go to both. And if both are at an event, you can still visit both. Just, order accordingly. So the model at the time, I think things have changed a little bit since then, but we'll get into that a bit. The model at the time was fairly communal and market elevating. And there was a general understanding that every time you add a customer for one food truck, you are likely adding a customer for many food trucks, because once someone gets over the R word and says, oh, wow, this stuff is really good, I'm going to go try another food truck and I'm going to tell my friends, right? So it was a pretty easy leap to make. Like, oh, I am visibly getting more customers because I'm being a part of this. I'm not trying to compete against it. So, and I spoke to owners at all the events. I started attending food truck events on the regular. And so I would talk to the owners, and if it was a slow day, they got nothing to do. So they're happy to tell you stories about how the food truck market works, about different events, different spots, how Twitter works, how Twitter doesn't work, etc. So I got a lot of information from them. And then you can also talk to customers of food trucks, because they're very excited about this. They're kind of a niche, but they like it. They make the trip. So one thing that people don't always connect is that if you are a regular at a restaurant, maybe you have a favorite restaurant, right? So you know where it is. It's always in the same place. If you go there tomorrow or next week, same place. So making that trip has already been factored into your, like, oh, I think I'll go to my favorite restaurant. I already know where it is. I'm almost, it doesn't even matter if I drive the car or ride a bike, or, I know where I'm going. With food trucks, if you have a favorite mobile vendor, step 1, figure out where they're going to be. Step 2, figure out, how you're going to get there, whatever that entails. Step 3, make the journey. Your favorite restaurant stuck in the ground might be, 3.2 miles away, or what would that be in kilometers? Is like 5 kilometers or something. Yeah, almost 6. So you may already have that all factored in. Like I said, oh, my favorite food truck is 12 kilometers away. We're going. So you have to proactively factor in a new travel plan or a new destination and routing. So there's a little bit more inbound marketing potential there, right? Someone has taken the action to locate you or to keep track of where you're going to be. So this is an interesting component that I think is often lost on app developers. It is certainly lost on organizers and on businesses around the event for the inbound marketing component. So back in those days, the main way to find your favorite food trucks was to use Twitter. So every food truck had a Twitter handle. Every food truck would tweet. This is in the 140 character limit days. So they would do a whole tweet with come and see us at Twitter handle for event with Twitter handles for other attendees. And if there were like 3, 4, or 6, you could probably fit them all in there. If there were more than that, there might be a second tweet. But they would always make it work. And again, because there was a recognition of the value of you may want to come out and see us, but because I've tagged these other food trucks, their fans may see them and say, oh, I will go to this event, or vice versa, right? There was just a more of a proactive discovery process. So people could find new favorites and visit their old favorites and all that, like I said. So it was an interesting marketing dynamic to watch and to be involved with. So Twitter was the way. Geotagging tweets used to be a thing. It's not really a thing anymore, but you could literally tweet a location, a latitude and longitude, or a longitude, latitude if you're being precise. And sometimes that would be useful. There would be the Twitter card concept started coming out, or the mapping, being able to see where a tweet was on a map was a thing for a little while. For some reason, probably privacy or just not wanting to deal with it. It's kind of faded. I don't think people really do it anymore. But the interesting thing is that when you would tweet a location, it would often be an address, right? Because the food truck person would tweet about an event tomorrow or next week, whatever, probably tomorrow or today, but they may not actually be there. So they would enter in the address. Something you realize very early back in those times, when you tweet an address, or when you indicate where you're going to be by address, you are indicating a postal address. So there's a particular longitude, latitude. There's a particular marker on a map that will appear where that address is, not where you will be. So Twitter started showing some of these early issues with when you try to engage a customer and you are on the move, you may not be precisely where you have told them. Kind of interesting. Maybe inside baseball, but it did actually turn into a problem many times. So, but the other side of Twitter was that we could post foodie pics very easily. So take a picture of a particular menu item, like here's what I'm having today from this food truck. So you tag the owner, you tag the event, picture of the food. That was a shameless promotion. So you had your regulars helping you with marketing. This has become a foodie business, but at the time it was just goodwill. It always came back to me. I know that. So it was fun, good times. But those are people that are tweeting today with pictures of the food at the event. They're at it. They can take pictures of the event, the vendors, the food, etc. So they're doing like a live, here's what's up feed. And because of the cross-linking of Twitter and all that, it was a fun way to promote things. So it worked. This being Silicon Valley, though, at the time where I was, there would be many apps, and people were early adopter had a mindset of early adoption. So there'd be a new app coming along all the time. They all operated about the same way. They all had the same major fault, and that will be they were scraping Twitter. That was the major, like the commonality. Like, food trucks are posting on Twitter where they're going to be. So we can just scrape Twitter, figure out where the food trucks are, and create maps and profile pages and all that. Now, that's interesting. And Roaming Hunger really dove into that head first. And Roaming Hunger is still around, I think. National food truck booking company, which I'll get into in a second. But initially, Roaming Hunger would just scrape Twitter and create resources for customers. And that's important for the customer. So, hey, find your favorite food truck on Roaming Hunger. And there were occasions when the information was wrong. For whatever reason, either the tweet was not clear, maybe the AM or PM was presumed. One of my favorite stories is a food truck owner with Hiya, Hiyaaa exclamation point, Korean barbecue truck. When I saw her at Edgewood Eats one time, she said, "Dan, Roaming Hunger told people I was going to be at Angel Island at 2 a.m. And so people were mad at her for not being where Roaming Hunger told them she would be. Well, they made that up. That was incorrect. So whatever their software bug was, it was not her responsibility, but it was, it affected her. People got over it, and they realized that it was not her fault, but it was an extra unneeded headache because of the way Roaming Hunger was implemented. I will say there are 2, and there may be more. I haven't really looked in a long time. There are 2 platforms, though. Food Trucks In, literally Food Trucks In, and they have a website, I think, and I think they're still around. And possibly even better, although limited in scope, is Street Food Finder. Definitely Street Food Finder was based on on calendar sharing. So it would put on a map all the food trucks, but the owners would interface by sharing their calendar with Street Food Finder. So that was a good approach. It's something that I was also implementing when I get to my thing that I was building. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, cool. That works. That's good. Cool. I've also talked about smart calendars in general in the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. Calendars are underappreciated for things like this, especially. Calendar plus map equals food truck. So those were interesting. But again, the owner rarely knew about these apps. So people would come to food truck events and show their app to different owners. Like, hey, would you sign up for this? Would you try this? So it's almost like being hit on if you're working in a bar. Like, people would come there and hit on the owner. Try my app. And once we had the owners association, the owners would say, Dan, that guy over there is trying to do an app or something. So I would check out these apps, and they were always awful. They were always awful, and they also did not account for the other side of the challenge. So they were seeing the Twitter feed, and they would have someone sign up, and we'll just scrape your Twitter feed, but you can add your other stuff, and you can add this and that and whatever. You can put in your other social media contacts and all that. So they would always interact with the owner, which is fine, but not sufficient. It's necessary, but not sufficient. So when the owners were involved, okay, great. But then they have a challenge. Okay, I've signed up for 25 different applications. I have to manage, 4 social media platforms or more, Twitter, Facebook, Yelp. Instagram was not around yet. Was there another? There were probably others. There was always some new thing that they had to deal with. So, and then having to deal with individual organizer websites if there was one. So, Roaming Hunger, having to deal with that, or that's sort of an organizer at some point along this timeline. Movable Feast. What was the other one? Food Truck Mafia. These various Bay Area organizers would have these events all over the place. So they would use their own promotional tools and and then suddenly, and then there's 25 different applications that are making use of some or all of these bits of information, pulling them together. Do you want to sign up and manage them in some way? Yes, of course. I would like to spend my entire life working with applications that may or may not survive, and most of them did not. So it's kind of a lose-lose for customers and owners. The food truck app developer would have a little foray into wow, this is so exciting. I love food trucks and I want to build an app. And then they would probably realize that, I've just built the same thing that everybody else built. So we need something better. And this is on the tool or app side. On the ground regarding mobile regulation, legislation and regulation that are typically protectionist. That's a whole other topic for another time. And we need to have organizers. When I say we, I mean customers who like food trucks, because that's how they stay in business. We need event organizers that understand how the model works. There was just a tailgate party that Guy Fieri put on here in Vegas on Sunday, right before the game. They had mobile vendors. I don't know if they were food trucks, but they're just mobile vendors in general. Booths, carts, whatever. Booths, carts, trucks, whatever. And at the event, there were some places were giving away free food. So the larger promoters and food companies were handing out free food, which pretty much kills the food truck, the for pay or whatever, not non-free mobile vendor. So smaller businesses who didn't go anticipating handing out food all day for free ended up with a whole bunch of food that they didn't sell anyway. So big minus. And that just comes from a lack of communication, a lack of understanding, perhaps, more knowing more before, during, and after. Always better, no matter what your business is. So this was another rude awakening, but they happen all the time. So not a surprise. An owner-driven platform, though, is my approach personally. When someone comes to a small business owner and says, hey, I'm doing a thing, you would say, well, why are you doing this thing? And how do you know how this thing works? So many times you would find people, food truck fans, I'm a customer, I like food trucks. There's a thing here in Vegas called WTF, and it used to be WTF, where's the food truck? But now it's just, where's the food truck? Where's the food trucks? Another thing I won't link to. The owner of that started off, he's a sales guy. He started off with the notion that he would help get funding for new food truck owners, and because he's, I love food trucks, I want to help them get their business started. So he was going to do a funding / sort of, not quite an incubator, but enabling new business owners, funding to get the truck mods and do some marketing and so on. But he said it was so hard to find food trucks, so I decided to write an app. Well, he decided to have some software developers in another country do it. They probably have never been to a food truck in their lives, maybe, or not, certainly not in Vegas. So he started here, created a national customer base by walking up to food trucks and saying, hey, can I sign you up for free? So it's an awful application, and it doesn't service the needs of the owner. Why? Because his model was to get between the customer and the vendor, mobile vendor, and to extract value that way, right? So who is his customer? Well, that's tricky because he's taking a piece of different event bookings and so on. So, and he wasn't really offering much value in return. So then it became like, well, and case in point, one person I spoke to, I know it's a small sample, said, I thought that this food truck was on the map and it was here. And I said, right, if it's gray, it's not there anymore. But he leaves all the food trucks at their last location until they open at a new location. So they're gray when they're closed and they're reddish orange, orangish red maybe, when they're open. But that's an awful user experience. And so this person arrived thinking this other vendor was going to be here, but a vendor who was not using this platform was there instead. So the customer was like, I thought this was going to be this other food truck. So there's a whole bunch of weird things that people don't think about when they don't do the due diligence of talking to customers and organizers and vendors and owners and venue owners and city council and planning and zoning, which I have done. It's a lot of work, but then you end up with a vastly richer understanding of how a marketplace works. So the big gaping hole, though, the gap, almost uncrossable in most of these platforms, and except in the specific case where they're going to monetize their getting in the way, the other side of the coin for mobile vending is the getting business. If I'm a food truck owner, I need to be somewhere. I don't have a brick and mortar. Well, maybe I do, but I don't have a brick and mortar location for my food truck. Unless I have a restaurant, I want to have, or maybe I own any business and I also have a food truck, right? So you can entice customers to come to your business with a nice food truck. And then with portable variety, you can have those food trucks move around. So there's like, oh, today it's this and tomorrow it's that. And if you come next week, it's going to be two. And so we used to call it social activation and portable variety, two great tastes. But the other side of the coin, again, not only is it customers finding you, but being able to be found. You have to have a place to operate your business at any particular time. Ideally, in some way, complying with local regulations regarding the amount of time you can spend there, whether you can be in a street or in a parking lot, whether you need to have a restroom nearby within a certain number of feet, whether you need to have a hand wash station, all these different parameters that if you are trying to operate a food truck, you don't know to ask sometimes, or or the information is not easily available, or it's not clear to the person organizing the event. The fee structure is not clear. Who's doing the marketing? So the relationship between the vendor and the organizer, or sometimes the vendor, organizer, and venue, if those are two different things, right? Oftentimes it's a parking lot that I'm renting from a venue host and I have their approval. Do you have it in writing? Well, no, they sent me an email. Was it the tenant or the property owner? Because that matters. So all these little details start to creep up and become a problem. But if you just write an app to direct customers where the food trucks are, you are only adding to the workload, but not delivering real value to the food truck owner, the small business owner. So you're actually adding to their workload by having this other source of potential misinformation, but you're not building up their business, right? The business is booking locations so you can operate. The engagement with customers is great. That's why you're in business. But the business side is having a place to operate that you don't get shut down, that you don't get cited with a code violation, etc., parking tickets, etc. So vendors finding events, organizers finding vendors, so food truck vendors, right? Finding events to attend or participate in, whether they're well-known or new. Maybe there's a once-a-year event. Here we have the Great American Foodie Fest, which is a total ripoff. But organizers finding vendors. Hey, we want to have a food truck at our small business location for our employees every day or every week. How do we do that? So the first thing you do is call one food truck owner. Oh, I saw a food truck. I'll call them. Well, now that food truck owner has control over that location because you've handed it to them, and they will book their friends, and your customers may not enjoy the full spectrum of possibility. They may tack on fees that you're not aware of. There's a problem with promotion. Like, how does anyone know the food truck is going to be there? And then one of the big ones is, are you going to charge a fee for this? Are you allowing someone to park in your parking lot or operate on your site? Do you have the right to allow that as a property owner versus tenant? But what if you only have 20 employees, or what if you only have 20 who like food trucks? Then it's not worth it for the food truck owner. So they make the trip out to your site. They need to be able to attract a crowd of at least, say 100 people to make it worthwhile to operate there. So yes, it's a day of business, but if it ends up costing money, that's not sustainable. Some have tried. So the entire ecosystem of mobile vending, portable variety, social activation relies on some good actors and some good faith interactions to make sure that the food truck isn't footing the entire bill for this outing. And so that's something to be aware of, and it can be presented to the organizers and so on as a part of a booking process so that they know what they're getting themselves into, and the vendor can know some of these answers up front before they get into something that becomes an unsustainable cost. So, but again, most apps didn't do this. They were just customer focused. So scraping a Twitter feed, getting it wrong, whatever. And then the platforms that have taken this approach to include the booking will often expect a piece of whatever the arrangements are. They'll want a fee, they'll want a percentage or something. And when you're in a restaurant business, as you may know if you are or ever have been, as people start taking your money from the meager remnants after your costs are accounted for. So your profit on a day out, maybe, $50, $100, maybe, on a normal, just having a lunch day. If you're at a big giant event, your costs may be double or triple. Your fees may be substantial. You may end up with $1,000, $2,000 after you've paid your employees and so on. So the more fees that come out of that take home, the less easy it is to operate your business. And unfortunately, a lot of newcomers to the food truck business, they open a food truck because they're a chef, or they love people. They're doing the front of the house, or they do the back of the house. They have a concept. They have an ethnic food menu from when they were a kid that they want to bring to the people. So food trucks are a lower cost. There's no tenant improvements to deal with and so on. but the costs are hidden in the future. They are, hey, I'm not in the same place every day. That can be a challenge. So taking any event that they can, paying whatever exorbitant fees in exchange for meager exposure and no promotion. And so what you end up with is pay to be at my event, and then you promote my event for me because I'm not going to promote you, but you get to operate your business. First Friday Foundation in Las Vegas. So this is not uncommon. The other fun one is, say you see food trucks at a trade show here in Vegas. If they're at the convention center, and this is old information I haven't asked recently, but it used to be 40% revenue share. So if you were going to sell a bottle of water for $1, 40 cents of that would go to the Las Vegas Convention Center and or Consumer Technology Association, however that arrangement worked out. And that's all sales, cash or credit card or anything. So in some cases, the vendor will have to deal with a point of sale terminal, a cash register provided to them so that all their sales are tracked by the organizer. Not a fan of that, but they let themselves get into that. That's why they should have an owners association that looks out for them. Voice of experience. That'll be a whole nother episode. So I started down this path of developing a platform for food truck owners, owner first, to solve some of the, just some initially, and more over time, of the issues that they were running into. One of my favorite aha moments was, and this will drive all of my efforts moving forward, even though it's this many years later. We're talking 12 years later, but it's still one of those challenges. It's an engineering. It really is an engineering or a math challenge, how business works, but how populations move, how information is located, optimizing a customer experience, etc. So, owner first. So you're a vendor, you own a food truck. Great. You sign up when you want to. I'm not going to tell you to. I'm not going to sign you up for free and you don't know what's going on. So I've seen that happen too. You sign up when you want to. Maybe there's a free trial period. I haven't worked that out. And my business model and approach have mostly been unchanged. Some of the finer points are still to be tested, like that guy on the motorcycle. So sign up, $10 a month, flat. Do all the business you can do. I don't want a piece of your work. You work. You're doing that work. My work is software engineer. Your work is working with your customers. I don't want your customers to hang out on my website. I want them to go to your food truck, go eat. So, okay, that often gets a raised eyebrow. Like, wait a minute, why are you doing this? Well, because it's a challenge. That's the common problem in the world, is that people don't understand motivations. But if you are a software engineer or just a nerd in general, sometimes you just want to do it to see if it works. So charging the monthly subscription fee makes the relationship clear. This platform works for you. I'm not interested in taking your customers. I'm not interested in charging them money for something. I'm not interested in building relationships with your organizers. You tell the organizers that this tool will work for the booking side, right? Accounting for business development, right? Getting new business by enabling organizers and venue hosts to be a part of the process with transparency about rules and requirements at the particular location. Can I park in the street? Can I park in the parking lot? Will there be a trash receptacle? Will there be a hand wash? Will there be bathrooms? Bathrooms available for the vendor and their employees, bathrooms for the customers, etc. So there's all sorts of, the two big things that I've seen way too many times. One, have I received permission from the venue property owner? I already mentioned that. I've seen that so many times. But the tenant said we could be here. Yeah, but the tenant doesn't matter. It's the property owner. That's how the rules work. And this may vary wherever you are. But unless there is actual ability to grant permission to operate a business in a parking lot on a particular property, he said so. It doesn't cut it. And that's a letter that often needs to be in writing and so on. So the other thing, I totally spaced. The other thing is promoting who's going to be there, right? Unless it's a private event, you generally help the vendor by letting other people know, not putting the onus completely on the vendor. So if you say, hey, we're a car dealership, we're going to have food trucks. okay, they usually will promote that in some way. If you go to any event where there are going to be food trucks and you just see "and food trucks" as a part of the event promotion, that does almost nothing to support the vendors, right? So now you're saying pay me money or give me a percentage of your revenue, rev share, or both, fee plus rev share. If you go to a school or a charitable event of some kind, normally it's like, well, donate 10% of your take of your revenue for the day. 10% goes to the charity. Like, okay. So you're asking vendors to take money out of their cash register for the sake of this business opportunity. And then you're saying, oh, and by the way, you tell everyone you're going to be here. So to me, the minimum engagement would be if you're going to be at my venue or if you're going to be at my event, I'm going to tell people not only who's going to be here, but how to find you in general, right? These 10 food trucks are going to be here this Friday. Here's the links to each of them. Here's their name properly spelled, because food truck names tend to be a little weird for recognition purposes. So many times I've seen local coverage. Hey, there's a food truck event and there's 25 food trucks, but we only talked to 3 of them. So the value proposition, I always tell people, some people come for the band and they stay for the food truck. Some people come for the food truck, stay for the band. So if you're going to have these big events, it behooves you and everybody participating to tell the world what's up. So that was the other. I mean, there are several other parts that are left out on the organizer/event side, but those are the 2 big ones, right? And they're just so often left on the table. And if you are building a platform to extract money rather than building up an entire marketplace, if you don't have a long tail view, you end up with so many of the tools we have now. Roaming hunger has just become a train wreck. WTF, just awful. I don't even know if people use it anymore. It's hard to say. I've never heard a good thing about it, but you can always tell when there's a new food truck on WTF because it's the one that's open. I'll let you find that. So yeah, I think taking more money from this already low margin business is a challenge, and you'll see some food trucks go away because nobody can be found, and the different platforms will start talking about food trucks as if they are they'll use that language, our food trucks, as if you have a stable of food trucks that you can choose from, but there's hopefully no exclusivity. There's no such relationship that would, and if there were, it's not beneficial to food truck owners, certainly. So you end up with these platforms standing between the vendor and the customer. And my approach is completely opposite. I'm behind the vendor, literally and figuratively. And the tools are there to help them develop their sales to customers, right? Customers can find them and so on, and their business to be able to book events and have their doors open somewhere, right? And be found. So $10 a month seemed fair. Everyone I've talked to over the years is like, sure, that's less than 1 hour of minimum wage in most places, some places. So it's a predictable expense. It's not a revenue share, which is always a little bit painful, right? $10, do all the business you can do. Okay. And then finally, I only have a few points here. There's a myriad of things I could talk about for days. My view is that it should be web first, web only, really. Nothing to install. No, you're not taking over a customer. Now, when you install a Roaming Hunger or another app, an application on your mobile device, you are getting over a small hurdle, a barrier of entry on the customer side, right? You're taking that action item to install a thing on your device. So now you have a device that could be sharing your locations and so on. You may or may not want that. You may or may not have access to controlling that. Lately you do. Back in the day, you did not have the granular permissions that you have now. But it is a thing to install. Sometimes you have to sign up. Now, I'm not against signing up, but I am against having to do these different steps to get to the food truck you want to go to, right? So when you're not web first, your website may not have correct information as often. It may not have all the information, etc. So web first also means that any food truck that you find, I'll share it with you. Here's a link to this food truck. They don't have a website. If they do have a website, make that website highly visible, because guess what? Visiting the food truck is the goal, not getting more traffic on my website. I know that sounds crazy, right? But in a subscription model, my bills are paid by my customers. Their bills are paid by their customers. We don't need to intermingle them. So web first, nothing to install. And then if you want to book an event, for example, you don't have to install an app, or you don't have to go through unnecessary extra steps. So book on the website, share the event with your coworkers. If it's a work lunch kind of thing, like office parks would often have food trucks come for, every day, different food trucks, different, one day they're at this business, one day they're a block away at another one. So that's a little outing for everybody that works in the area. They can all converge. Worked out great. Hey, there's 2 food trucks and they're like 500 feet away. Oh, I could go to both, that kind of thing. So it actually does work, especially if you ask, hey, food truck owners, does it work for you if we have 3 food trucks around here? Yeah, it does. It works great. Perfect. So capturing some of that, feeding it back to the organizers so that they know that they're actually helping, not hurting. And I've talked to most small business people, especially, will get that. Like, yeah, I want to have a food truck. I don't want to destroy their business for that. So there can be a little bit of symbiosis, which is nice. And then if you are a food truck, if you're an organizer and you want to get food trucks, you may ask your friend, maybe a colleague in the same office park, in the same industry, hey, how do you find food trucks? I find them delightful. You can say, oh, I use this tool. Send them a link. Oh, I don't have to install anything. Now, obviously, booking, organizing, sure, you got to sign up because you got to have somebody to talk to about where they're going, etc. Even if there's an agreement in place, and there should be. So the ability to share tools, use them, tell others about them, share locations, and so on, critical. So that was the point there. The other thing, I mentioned the calendar stuff. So when you are visiting a food truck, you are visiting a food truck. Here we are. I've heard the food truck owners say when asked, how do we find you? And the 2 common questions, are you going to be here tomorrow? Or, are you going to be here sometime in a predictable time frame? And where do I find, where do I go to find you? Like, what's your presence online, I suppose? So number 1, probably not. Oh, we're only here this week. We're on a rotation, some inside baseball response. And then, how do I find you? Where do I go? We have a profile page on Roaming Hunger. Okay, well, Roaming Hunger now owns your brand. If they're flaky, that affects you. So I personally think all food trucks or all small businesses should have a business site, a business website that they have 100% control over, or as close to it as possible in the modern era. So having a place to point. Now, what food truck owners will typically do is they'll put it used to be they just put an icon for Facebook, like find us on Facebook, Twitter, Yelp, now, later Instagram. You're like, yeah, but you don't have what your handle names are. Oh, just look for us. And my favorite version of this is a food truck called Twisted Chill, and another one in the Bay Area. Twisted Chill, ice cream truck, and Twister was they make like cone meals. They're good. That didn't come out right. But they make meals in a dough of some sort, cone, and then they put, they're good. I'll just leave it there. Twister, find it in the Bay Area. I think they're still open. Twisted Chill, I believe, is not. Twisted Chill, though, cool. Both owners, very cool. You could very easily confuse people about how to find them. Another food truck had an underscore in their name for some reason. That was unexpected. So you could confuse names and brands and all manner of things. So it was rare for some reason. Nowadays, you could probably have a Linktree link or something. But back in the day, people would just have an icon that pointed to, here, we're on these sites. Good luck. See ya. So their brand was always handed over to a platform that was not purpose-built. So using a platform as a business engagement tool is okay, but I still believe to this day that owning your presence is critical. I've done other episodes on my other shows about this. Publish on your own server. Publish on your own site if you prefer. But if you have the ability to engage with your customers on your terms, then they will more easily find you. And if it's not, they're not required to install an application. One of my favorite owners back in the day said, "Oh, I just spent $1,500 to have an Android and an iPhone app and a website built." And I said, his name was Brian. I said, Brian, I follow like 100 food trucks in the Bay Area, and a lot of them were following me. So nice, humble brag. Did you need me to install 100 applications on my phone to find food trucks? And he kind of paused. He's like, I guess not. I said, website, yes. Apps, no. So there's no reason to add hurdles, require more effort of your customers. They're already going to travel to find you. Try to make it easy. So the calendar idea along those lines, I mentioned earlier, there was a law firm, Morrison Forrester in Menlo Park. I think it's still there. Lovingly referred to as MoFo. So they would have a food truck in the parking lot. It was a high-rise law firm. I'm going to say like 10 floors, maybe 12, maybe 6. I don't know. Not a tower, but it was definitely a high-rise building. So not everyone could see outside. Not everyone would look over on the side of the parking lot through the window of the top floor. Oh, which food truck is here? I can't tell. It's the top of a food truck. So I was speaking to different owners about that. And one owner, Graziano Iosa from Sicily, had a really, really good food truck, Italian food. He goes, Dan, I've noticed they have the office manager. If she doesn't send out the email, I get half the business. Like fully 50% of sales for a day were dependent entirely on the office manager who was responsible for the bookings. The office manager for the whole place, whatever that role was. The person, I think it was a she, but that person basically made or broke the day for the vendor based on whether the email was sent. I was like, it'd be so cool to have a calendar for MoFo. So if you think about this, suppose you book an event at a venue. Well, you can usually go to a venue and see what events are booked there. You can figure out what's going to be happening at the Allegiant Stadium here or the convention center. At smaller venues, though, they tend not to do that. That's a lot of overhead, and they may not have a lot of public events or something. But food trucks are going to make or break their business on a daily basis based on getting over the hump of minimum customers, minimum covers to cover their costs. So if you can make it easier for them to be found at a non-private event, great. So how do you do that? So one approach is to have shareable event content. So you don't have to install an app or something. Oh, here's a link to today's food truck at MoFo. But what if you also create a MoFo calendar, a venue calendar automatically generated from the bookings? So whenever you book or rebook or cancel, that's reflected in a calendar. Now, everyone inside MoFo, everybody near MoFo, anybody who likes the possibility of which food trucks are going to be there can subscribe to the MoFo calendar, and it'll just be a calendar that they can see every day. Oh, yeah, my favorite food truck is there today. So that's where I started examining the possibilities of a calendar based on location, based on favorite food truck, based on event, right? I want to follow the Movable Feast weekly calendar or monthly calendar. So they would have multiple events per week. I want to see who's where, when, how, etc. I'm only interested in food trucks at my office or in this radius. I'm only interested in this particular food truck, etc. So once you have event location and time and which vendors will be there, per vendor, and that's part of the value proposition for my customer would be, I'm keeping track of your schedule with you maintaining it. Like I'm not just going to randomly start inserting events. If a organizer wants to book you, they will say, would you like to be at this event? You say yes, bam, it's in. I can now create events and calendars and profile pages and all that very easily, but it's under your control, not mine. I am not doing the legwork. This way, nothing is surprising. Nothing is, I'm not taking your money for this. The $10 keeps the lights on and pays for the platform to get you business. It does not dip into your cash register, right? It's a fixed expense monthly. So I have yet to run into anyone who doesn't say, okay, when can I give you my money? And that's where you run into things like, oh, I had a house fire, then I moved here, and I was traveling around the world for Intel, and then I started an owners association here, and they were jerks, and then there was a pandemic, and then it kind of all became untenable, and here we are today. But my approach now is to take the original concept and not have a platform that I would market, so to speak, but have a software as a service, you could say, so that the food truck owners can make use of the tools I've described, but other people can build apps around it, so then you don't have to go through the trouble of acquiring everybody's logos and menus and all that. And then you can safely publish like, hey, here's an event. It took place on Saturday at this location. Here are all the vendors in the lineup. So if you're a newspaper or a blogger, or you can link to the thing and say, there it is. That's everything you need to know about that event. So it doesn't need to necessarily be an application you install or a brand to recognize from that perspective. So I've kind of pared down where I was going with this. I also was not focusing only on food trucks, but all mobile vendors. So some non-food trucks are out there. Some people do booths and carts and tents, and they're selling wares at farmers markets and so on. Farmers markets are a whole nother problem, same set of problems, but in a different way as far as promotion and fees and customer engagement and so on. So yeah, these are all things that I learned, not by saying, hey, I want to build an app, but by working on 7 food trucks, by forming an owners association in the Bay Area, forming another one here in Vegas, which didn't go as well, by engaging city council and health departments, by talking to organizers, talking to customers, and being a customer myself. And actually, when I was developing my platform initially, I would develop during the day at a coffee shop, and I would go to a food truck event in the evening and show demos of things to owners. Oh, that's cool. Or customers, yeah. So a little bit of minor co-creation. Then I had a house fire, and then I moved to Vegas, and then everything got set aside for a while. But it's still cool. Mobile business, mobile consumer. Everybody's always on the move, so you don't have that brick and mortar anchor, making it an interesting problem as far as inbound marketing, as far as the effort, the call to action, and who actually converts to a customer that shows up. Do they tell their friends? What is the social activation potential of a given area? Often left to chance, or they're competing, they're stealing my customers. Well, customers who traveled to see this food truck were not going to travel to see you. So you can't really say they're stealing customers. So there's a whole bunch of dynamics about the moving customer, moving business, the interactions with brick and mortar, health department, code enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. It's really more complicated than you probably imagined or wanted to imagine. It's not untenable, but it is certainly not easy. So I'll coming to the end, I'll wrap up with a couple of myths. And these are myths either to customers or to owners or to organizers. It's just a general myth. Food trucks can just park anywhere and conduct business. If only that were true. It is not. The way California got so much food truck action going was because of the efforts of the SoCal Mobile Food Vendors Association, SoCal MFVA. Matt Geller, as an attorney, when he was just getting started, defended a food truck owner who received a parking ticket for parking on a public street. So there's a state regulation from the Department of Motor Vehicles regarding vending on public byways, throughways. So it had a useful number, like 2 repeating digits, like 22233 or something like that. I don't remember it. I haven't looked it up. It's been a while. But essentially, because of that precedent, anytime there was any sort of legal entanglement, the SoCal MFVA had two attorneys on retainer, plus they had Matt. So they would lobby to get, citations overturned, but also to develop a better understanding about mobile regulation and how they fit into the marketplace and what's legal and what's not. So we worked with Matt to form the Bay Area MFVA, similar aims and goals. So that was fun. I worked with 2 cities to change regulations for zoning, Sunnyvale and Mountain View. I said I worked on 7 food trucks, helped organizers, interacted with customers all the time. So, and there's often this misconception that, they can just do business wherever they want. And no way. But we can get closer to that than we are in most places today. First Friday, for example, that's a thing in many places. It's First Friday, usually on the first Friday of the month, of any given month. Almost always on Friday. Or other large gatherings are the best way to support food trucks. In fact, no, the best way to support food trucks, the top 2 ways. 1, go visit them, patronize their business when they are at a free lunch event or something. They're in a small 1, 2, 3 food truck gathering, especially on a public street. You can ask them, are you paying to be here? If they say no, give them money or buy something from them. You are helping them to keep their money, to deliver the goods and services, the product quality, the presence, their future plans, and not giving a percentage to the house, so to speak. So the other best way, the even better way, is to be the organizer, to book food trucks to be at your events. So I've heard this one. Can you come to my office? Yes, I can. So how do I book you? Well, you go to Roaming Hunger. No, don't do that. So the closer you can keep out the middlemen, so to speak, if you can keep the fees down to zero and say, yeah, I just want to have a food truck at my office for, every Tuesday at lunch. And it doesn't just show up and however many customers. Will you tell other people? Oh, yeah, I have a calendar that I share on this thing that Dan Hugo wrote. But the fact is, the more money they can keep, the fewer fees they can pay, but also the more exposure they can get without paying those fees, the better. And those are the two best ways to support food trucks. So number one way is to book them for catering, private events, public events, whatever. Work with them directly. That's number one, very clearly. That is arguably the reason to do events, right? I always told the owners and the things the owners associations, if you're going to pay to be in an event, you better get at least one new customer for bookings, right? Not a customer to order a food item. I want you each to find someone who says, can you come to my office? Can you work at my party I'm having? Can you come to my musical event? Can you park behind my restaurant on Thursdays so we have all night or late night kitchen option? That's why you pay money for marketing. Don't pay money for sales. Those, those go away. So the best way is not to go to, and here in Vegas, there was this misconception. Oh, food trucks, that's at First Friday. They're not the same thing. Very different. I think First Friday charges $550 now. It used to be $400, might be $500, $550. Crazy. And food trucks. No marketing. And First Friday Foundation is a charity. Food truck prices are too high for what they offer. Sometimes. But sometimes it's because they got to pay 40% rev share to the Las Vegas Convention Center, or they had to pay $2,500 to park at the Great American Foodie Fest. And plus they're giving a revenue share of every dollar you buy something from them. They got to give 25 cents to the house. So the reason that food truck prices seem so high is that their costs are astronomical by comparison. And people will argue, oh, and by the way, they often have to be inspected more often than brick and mortar restaurants. Sometimes they have to be inspected by different health departments if they're operating in different counties. Sometimes they need different business permits for different cities. The list goes on. So just because they're not a brick and mortar doesn't mean they get away with a whole lot. Just think, they don't have a roof to protect you from rain. They don't have much in the way of heating. They sometimes have portable heaters or air conditioning for you. They don't have real plates and flatware, and these are all disposable. There's a whole bunch of challenges to get over. And oftentimes it is for the sake of bringing a product that they love or doing something that they love and hoping to bring that to people that love them or who appreciate them or who want to support them. So whenever you hear, food trucks are so expensive, in the back of your mind, you can think, yeah, but ask the food truck owner, how expensive is it? And they'll tell you. They will tell you. So that is where I will leave it today. I'm still a fan of food trucks, although I very rarely visit a food truck because I don't necessarily want to support the event organizers who overcharge. I'll use the word gouge, the food truck owners, and don't promote them. And it's also really a pain since I stopped using Instagram to find where food trucks are. I know where one of my favorites, Two New Fix, is up the street at the hospital near me on Fridays. But somebody should build a better platform to support the vendors and to make it easier to find your favorite food trucks or mobile vendors in general as a customer and to book them as an organizer without having to pay exorbitant fees, without having to cause extra consternation, and to make the tool work the way I need it to work, not having to sign up for Instagram or to, don't even get me started on Instagram, which is the common way now, or TikTok. Algorithm should not be selecting who sees you. It should be a calendar and a map and a list of menu items for the day. No TikToks. TikTok is fun. Business is conducted with tools that are not showing people what the algorithm says. It should be showing them what they want, what they're looking for, near where they're looking for, what their favorites are. Where do I go today for lunch? So that's what we will answer in the near term. And it will integrate with our other news product, the project that I'm working on with Innovate for Vegas. So all that said, thank you for listening as always. My voice is going to give out again. For some reason, the weather is not my friend today. Allergies/weather. So I will leave it there. Thank you again for visiting buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo. You do not have to buy me a coffee, but you can still see where my other projects are. I promise I will make some use of Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/DanHugo at some point. But I'm there if you want to follow. And then more stuff is coming, which I will talk about on my various audio programs and more. I will put them on those sites as I can so that you can find them. And there will be websites and other tools and various other coolness items coming soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.